Professional practices are where ethics, fair housing, and daily brokerage activities all come together. In the first section of this chapter, you saw that modern real estate practice must align with both legal requirements and ethical standards. In the second section, you saw how fair housing law translates the principle of equal opportunity into specific rules. This section focuses on how trade associations, codes of ethics, and industry customs shape a real estate professional's day-to-day behavior in every transaction. A true professional does not simply avoid getting in trouble. Instead, they commit to a high standard of job performance, fair dealing with clients and customers, full and honest disclosure, strict non-discrimination, and respectful relationships with other professionals. Job performance. A real estate professional's first responsibility is competence. Trade association codes and state regulations assume that when you hold yourself out as a real estate licensee, you understand the skills and knowledge required to perform the job safely and effectively. This includes market knowledge, real estate law, and evolving standards of practice. Market knowledge means more than knowing prices in a neighborhood. It includes understanding current inventory, typical days on market, local economic trends, common buyer preferences, and how different property features affect value. For example, a professional listing agent in a suburban market should be able to explain to a seller how school districts, commute times, or neighborhood amenities are influencing recent sale prices. A buyer's agent working with investors should know typical rental ranges, vacancy patterns, and anticipated maintenance costs in the area. Real estate laws include not only license law, but also contracts, agency requirements, disclosure rules, fair housing, environmental regulations, and advertising standards. For example, a professional must know when a written agency disclosure is required, what must be included in a purchase contract, what kinds of property conditions must be disclosed, and how earnest money should be handled under state rules. If the law changes, a professional seeks training, reads official guidance, and updates their practices instead of continuing to do things the old way. Evolving standards of practice refer to changes in technology, marketing methods, and consumer expectations. Online listings, electronic documents, digital signatures, transaction management platforms, and social media have transformed how clients search for homes and communicate with agents. A professional keeps up with these tools and understands how to use them in a way that is secure, compliant, and client-centered. For example, when using social media advertising, a professional ensures that marketing complies with fair housing rules and state advertising regulations, even in a casual or informal format. Many codes of ethics also encourage practices such as obtaining written agreements between parties, promoting exclusive listings, and using arbitration rather than litigation when disputes arise. Written agreements, such as listing contracts and buyer-broker agreements, clarify expectations, outline compensation, and help prevent misunderstandings. Promoting exclusive listings supports clarity in representation and reduces confusion about who has authority to act for the seller. Arbitration provisions in association rules or contracts provide a structured, private way to resolve commission and cooperation disputes between brokers without going to court, preserving relationships and saving time and money. And equally important is knowing the limits of your role. A real estate license does not make you an attorney, accountant, financial planner, securities broker, or tax advisor. For example, when a client asks, "Can I do a 1031 exchange and avoid all taxes?" the professional can explain the general concept of a like-kind exchange, but should also say, "I'm not a tax advisor." This is a great time to talk with your CPA or tax attorney so you can get advice tailored to your situation. Likewise, if a complicated title issue arises, such as an old lien, an unprobated estate, or a boundary dispute, the professional should recommend legal counsel rather than attempting to solve it alone. Recognizing the limits of your expertise protects you, your client, and the integrity of the transaction. Duties to clients. Most trade association codes emphasize that agents owe fiduciary duties to their clients. These duties typically include loyalty, obedience to lawful instructions, confidentiality, disclosure, reasonable care, and accounting. Professional practices translate those broad duties into specific behaviors. Honestly representing market value means using sound, objective data when advising a client on pricing. A listing agent should not inflate a suggested list price simply to obtain a listing, nor should a buyer's agent artificially deflate a property's value to pressure a seller. Instead, the professional prepares a comparative market analysis and explains how similar properties, market conditions, and the property's unique features support a recommended price range. Honestly representing property condition means being truthful about what you know and encouraging inspections when appropriate. For instance, if a roof appears near the end of its life or the seller has disclosed frequent repairs, a professional should not minimize the concern. Instead, they might say, "The roof appears aged. I strongly recommend that you obtain a licensed roofing inspection so you can understand remaining life and potential costs." This is consistent with both legal disclosure obligations and ethical duties. Respecting the rights and duties of other client-agent relationships means you do not interfere with existing agency agreements. For example, if a buyer approaches you but clearly states they already have a written buyer-broker agreement with another licensee, you should not encourage them to break that agreement. Instead, you might explain that they should work through their current agent or ask their broker how to handle concerns. Submitting all offers is another core duty. A professional presents every written offer received to the client as quickly as possible, unless the client has given lawful, prior written instructions that certain types of offers, for example, offers below a specific price threshold, need not be presented. Even if the agent thinks an offer is too low or poorly structured, it is not their decision to withhold it. The client is entitled to review it and decide how to respond. Avoiding commingling and conversion is critical to trust and legal compliance. Commingling occurs when a licensee mixes client funds, such as earnest money or rent, with their personal or operating funds. Conversion is the more serious act of using those funds for personal purposes. Professional practice requires following brokerage policies and state rules about trust accounts, promptly depositing funds, and maintaining clear records. For example, earnest money should be deposited into the proper escrow or trust account within the time period required by law or by contract. Keeping transaction documents current means that agreements, disclosures, inspection responses, addenda, and closing statements are completed, updated as needed, signed by all required parties, and retained in accordance with state record-keeping rules. A professional does not leave unsigned forms or missing pages in a file, because incomplete documentation can create disputes, regulatory problems, and liability. Duties to customers. In many transactions, you owe fiduciary duties to one party, your client, while dealing honestly and fairly with the other party, the customer. Professional standards make clear that "not my client" does not mean no duty at all. Duties to customers focus on honesty, fairness, and accurate information. Honestly representing market value and property condition to customers means you do not mislead or conceal material facts simply because the person is not your client. For example, if you are a listing agent and a buyer asks, "Are there any known roof leaks?" you cannot answer, "No," if the seller has informed you of prior leaks that have not been properly addressed. Instead, you must answer honestly within the limits of your knowledge and encourage the buyer to review disclosures and obtain inspections. Avoiding the use of the word "free" when a service is actually contingent on receiving a commission is also critical. If you tell potential buyers, "My services are free, but you are only paid if they purchase a home through you," the statement can be misleading. A more accurate explanation would be, My commission is typically paid by the seller through the listing agreement, so you usually do not pay me directly as the buyer. However, this can vary depending on the agreement and the offer. Professional practice favors clarity over marketing slogans that could mislead. Advertising truthfully applies to all public communications, including online listings, brochures, signs, social media posts, and personal websites. A professional does not exaggerate square footage, claim brand new roof when it is several years old, or state that a property has no issues when prior defects are known. Even puffing, overly enthusiastic opinions, should be used carefully, and never in a way that disguises or contradicts material facts. Disclosure is one of the most important bridges between legal compliance and professional ethics. Trade association codes and state laws encourage full and timely disclosure of facts that a consumer would reasonably want to know when making a real estate decision. Disclosing compensation from more than one party ensures transparency and prevents conflicts of interest. For example, if you are being paid by both the seller and the buyer, or you are receiving a referral fee from another brokerage or service provider, you must disclose this arrangement to your client and, where required, to the other party. Hidden compensation can undermine trust and may violate both law and ethics. Disclosure of property defects is another key area. You must disclose known, reasonably apparent material defects that a typical buyer could not easily see for themselves, and that would influence their decision to buy or the price they are willing to pay. However, you are not expected to discover latent or technical defects that would require specialized expertise, such as structural engineering issues hidden inside walls. Professional practice means you explain your role clearly and encourage inspections by qualified experts when appropriate. If you have any personal interest in a property, such as being the owner, a partner in an entity that owns the property, or a family member of the owner, you must disclose this interest to all parties when you are representing someone in a transaction involving that property. For example, if you list your own home or your sibling's property, you must clearly state in the listing and in any purchase contract that you are a licensed real estate professional and that you have an ownership or family interest. Any profits made on a client's money must also be disclosed. If you hold client funds in an interest-bearing account, state rules and ethical codes generally require that you follow the brokerage's trust account procedures and not personally benefit from interest or other returns unless this is clearly disclosed and permitted. Advertising and marketing should always identify your status as a real estate licensee and your brokerage. Anonymous advertising or advertising that hides your license status is generally discouraged or prohibited. A professional includes their name as licensed and the brokerage name in a clear, prominent way, so consumers can understand who is behind the message and how to contact the firm. Non-discrimination professional practices now treat compliance with fair housing laws as a baseline, not an optional feature. Trade association codes often go further, encouraging members to support the spirit of equal opportunity in addition to the legal minimums. This means that a professional avoids discrimination in all aspects of practice, including advertising, showings, pricing advice, negotiation behavior, and client counseling. In daily practice, non-discrimination might look like this. When building a showing schedule, you do not exclude a neighborhood because of the racial or ethnic makeup of its residents. When writing advertising, you avoid phrasing that expresses a preference for or against families with children, people of a certain religion, or people from certain countries. When speaking to clients, you keep your focus on objective factors like price, condition, features, and location, rather than on who lives in a neighborhood. You also avoid jokes, comments, or casual remarks that could signal bias. Professional relationships. Professional practices also govern how real estate licensees treat one another. The industry expects competition, but also professionalism. Ethics codes usually prohibit disparaging other brokers or agents, especially in front of clients or the public. For example, telling a seller, "Your last agent was incompetent and dishonest," is not only unprofessional, it may also be factually untrue and could expose you to complaints or legal claims. Foregoing unfair advantage includes avoiding deceptive tactics in multiple offer situations, not misrepresenting the existence or terms of other offers, and not pressuring another agent into violating their fiduciary duty to their client. It also means cooperating reasonably with other brokers when it is in the client's best interest, such as scheduling showings efficiently and sharing necessary information promptly. Many professional codes and association rules encourage arbitration rather than litigation when disputes arise between brokers over commissions, cooperation, or other professional issues. Arbitration is usually faster, less expensive, and less public than court proceedings. Participating in arbitration demonstrates a commitment to resolving disputes in a structured, respectful way. Respecting the agency relationships of others means that if an agent clearly represents a particular client under a valid agreement, you do not try to interfere. For instance, if a buyer attends your open house and tells you they are already working with another agent, you can answer basic questions about the property, but should direct them back to their agent for representation. Similarly, you do not attempt to convince a seller to cancel their current listing in the middle of its term solely to list with you. Conforming to accepted standards of co-brokerage practices means understanding how your local MLS and association expect cooperating brokers to share information, show properties, present offers, and handle communication. These customs create predictability and fairness, which benefits clients, customers, and professionals alike. Review summary. Professional practices are the practical expression of the ethical and legal principles you have been studying. A competent professional maintains strong job performance by staying current on market trends, legal requirements, and evolving standards of practice, while recognizing the limits of their expertise and referring clients to other professionals when needed. Duties to clients include honest representation of value and property condition, submission of all offers, safeguarding funds, and maintaining complete and current transaction records. Duties to customers emphasize honesty, fair dealing, truthful advertising, and accurate information, even when the person is not your client. Disclosure obligations require transparency about compensation, property defects, personal interests in property, and any profits made from handling client funds, as well as clear identification of your license status in advertising. Non-discrimination requires strict adherence to fair housing laws and support for the broader goal of equal opportunity in housing, avoiding discriminatory behavior in showings, advertising, negotiations, and counseling. Finally, professional relationships call for respect, cooperation, and fair competition with other licensees, including avoiding disparagement, honoring agency relationships, and using arbitration to resolve disputes. Together, these practices create a professional environment that protects consumers, strengthens public trust, and reduces the risk of regulatory or legal problems. Discussion. Why is it important for a real estate professional to recognize the limits of their role? Answer. Recognizing the limits of your role protects both you and your clients. When you try to provide legal, tax, or investment advice beyond your training, you risk giving incorrect information that could harm the client and expose you to liability or disciplinary action. Referring clients to attorneys, CPAs, or financial advisors when issues fall outside your expertise shows professionalism and helps ensure that clients receive accurate, specialized guidance. How do duties to customers differ from duties to clients? And why does that distinction matter? Answer. Duties to clients are fiduciary and include loyalty, confidentiality, and obedience to lawful instructions, while duties to customers focus on honesty, fairness, and accurate information. The distinction matters because you must always be honest with everyone, but you may not advocate equally for both sides. Understanding this difference helps you avoid undisclosed dual agency, conflicts of interest, and misunderstandings about who you represent in a transaction. Why are written agreements and current, complete transaction documents considered part of professional practice? Answer: written agreements and complete documentation clarify responsibilities, outline terms, and provide evidence of what was agreed if disputes arise. They help ensure compliance with state regulations, support brokerage supervision, and protect all parties. Maintaining up-to-date files, including addenda and disclosures, demonstrates that the professional is organized, attentive, and committed to accurate record keeping. How do professional relationships with other brokers influence outcomes for clients? Answer: positive professional relationships make it easier to schedule showings, negotiate offers, and resolve problems efficiently. When brokers trust and respect one another, they tend to communicate more clearly and cooperate more effectively, which can lead to smoother transactions, fewer delays, and better results for buyers and sellers. Conversely, adversarial or unprofessional behavior can create unnecessary conflict and may ultimately harm clients' interests. Closing remarks. Professional practices are where everything in this chapter becomes real. Ethics, fair housing, and legal requirements are not separate silos. They are woven into how you answer the phone, write an advertisement, show a property, negotiate an offer, and interact with other brokers. By committing to high job performance, clear disclosure, non-discrimination, and respectful relationships, you do more than protect your license. You build a strong, sustainable career based on trust. As you continue through the remaining sections of this chapter, keep asking yourself not only, is this legal, but also, is this professional, transparent, and fair to everyone involved?